today I'm going to be making a character build guide because a lot of people that I talk to have no idea what they're doing when they're trying to build their characters, or they sort of know what they're doing, but they end up doing a bunch of stuff wrong. And then I sit there trying to explain to them in Discord or something, and it takes forever. And it's really annoying because they just either don't get it or they're like, whatever, you're dumb. And then I'm like, no, I'm not, you're dumb. So I'm gonna sit here and explain all the stuff that I generally know about building characters. Okay, you need to be quiet, Hutao. I'm gonna explain all the stuff I know about building characters so I can send this video to people and say, here, watch this, so you can sort of get a general idea of what you're doing. Okay, so first, just some real simple basics for anybody who has no idea what's going on. You got your HP, that's how much health you have. Attack, this is a very important stat because this is where all your damage calculations start here. So if you want your damage to be good, you gotta have at least somewhat decent attack. Defense, probably the worst stat in the entire game. It's very not helpful. You want to avoid this. Except for a couple characters, but we'll go into that later. Elemental Mastery basically just makes all your actions do more damage. Your stamina, you just get that from playing the game. Crit rate, crit damage, these are very important. You need both of these, not just one or the other. We'll go into those more later. Some of these aren't that important. These are just for healing. Energy recharge is very important. This is how you get your burst back. Higher this is, the more energy you get, the sooner you can use your burst. It's an important stat to have, especially on support characters. And then just your elemental damage bonuses and stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the basics of the different types of characters. Basically, you got the main two types are you got your DPS character and your support characters. Pretty much in general, the best way to play the game is you have one DPS on your team and then you have 3 other characters supporting them. Sometimes you can do mixed teams with multiple DPS or like burst swap teams, but in general, you want 1 DPS and then 3 supports. Like this team that I have right here, Hutao is my DPS, and then I have Xingqiu, Zhongli, and Rosaria all as supports for Hutao. Your DPS is your person that's doing the damage. They're the one that you want to build first and put your best stuff on, and you want to like level them up the most. They're your strongest character and they're out there smacking stuff for you. Supports are usually characters that can do something while they're not the active character. Xingqiu, for example, his burst, it works when he's not on the field, so you can just pop it, swap to a different character. His burst is still like shoots out hydro swords and stuff. So he is a good support because he can do something while he's not on the field. Characters that can't do anything while they're not on the field are usually DPS characters because they can't really support anyone else because they can only do things while they're the active character. Zhongli is another super good support because he can put up a super strong shield that will protect your character and debuff everybody. He's a super great one. Rosaria, she's pretty much just there because I use her as a cross support for her burst because it can do damage when she's off the field after you pop it. Other types of characters, you can have sub DPSs, kind of similar to supports, but you usually build them more damage focused than ability focused. Hutao, for example, she has this skill that makes her do really high damage, but it only lasts for 9 seconds and then goes down on cooldown for 16 seconds. So she has 7 seconds where she's not really doing that much. So I could build another character sort of as a DPS, maybe not quite as strong, maybe they can still do some stuff off field, but that can fill the damage role during that time when Hu Tao can't really do any damage. You can also have like burst DPS, not burst as in their elemental burst, burst just as in really quickly. I don't really have too many characters built that way, but characters like Klee are good for that because they can just dish a ton of damage all at once, but then they're not really good after that initial burst of damage. So then you can swap to somebody else and do damage with somebody else. Another type of character, pretty simple, healers. Diona, Chi-Chi, Bennett. They all have abilities that can heal themselves and other characters. Chi-Chi, for example, has like this. Through talent, when you use it, it lets you heal all your characters when you hit things. Bennett has his ultimate. People are standing in it, they get healed by a certain percentage of his maximum HP, etc., etc. Kind of similar to healers, but not quite the same, are like shield units, like Zhongli, like I was talking about earlier. He's really good because he puts up a shield, and you don't really need to heal if you just don't take damage, which has kind of become more of the move that a lot of people make. Instead of running like a really strong healer, they'll just run a tiny bit of healing, and then just somebody like Zhongli who has a really strong shield, and then you just don't really take damage. And then lastly, there's sort of like some utility characters that do something outside of all of those roles. Like Zhongli can be sort of utility because this ability that he has makes a big pillar that you can climb up and go up places. You got some characters like Keqing. I don't have her, but her thing can let her teleport. Venti has his skill that can like make you jump up in the air. Just basic little things like that are considered like utility because they like let you like move around or do something that you normally can't, but it isn't really damage or healing or anything like that. If you're unsure of any of the reactions, I'll just pull this up really quick, composite, read all these if you want. These are what all the different reactions do. There we go. Alright, so the next thing I want to cover is just some basic team synergies. You got stuff like your elemental resonance. So using 2 of the same element, you get a bunch of bonuses. Pretty much the best ones are the Pyro one, because you get increased attack. The Cryo one, because it can give you increased crit rate against things that are frozen or affected by Cryo. And the Geo one, because with Geo, this gives you like a whole bunch of bonuses from shields and decreases Geo resistance and stuff. The other ones are okay, but generally not as useful in combat and stuff. So, but just keep those in mind if you're building like a team with certain elements. It's usually good to double up on at least one so you can get some kind of bonus off of that. So basically, you want to run characters that you can get reactions with, whatever reaction your team is going for. Hu Tao, Pyro DPS. So generally, I want Hydro or Cryo supports, because that'll let me do Melt and get bonus damage with her. Say with a character like Ganyu, I'll run some Pyro supports like Bennett and Xingling, because then I'll be able to do reverse melts with her, get that bonus damage. If I'm using Ningguang as a DPS, I'll run Zhongli with her, because then I'll be able to get the Geo Resonance and be able to get bonus that way. Some other good ones are like Nemo characters. Especially if you're running this 4-piece Viridescent set, they're really good for debuffing people against certain elements. Electro, it's not the greatest element, unfortunately. Its reactions aren't that strong, but if you're doing like a physical DPS, Electro can be good because then you can do Superconduct, which will debuff against physical damage. Basically, when you're picking elements for your teams and stuff, you basically just want to make sure that you're getting some kind of reactions that benefit you and not just a whole bunch of random things that don't do anything with each other. I mean, unless you're running stuff of all of one element, you'll be getting some kind of reactions going, but they just might not be super helpful to you. So you just want to make sure that you're getting some good reactions that will help you and make your team stronger. Alright, so moving on from reactions, another thing I should cover is artifact sets. I already talked about this one on Anemo characters. Pretty much any Anemo character besides Zhao, you should be running this set on, because it just makes Anemo way better and way more useful. The 4-piece set, the important part isn't really the swirl damage increase, but it's this decreases elemental resistance when an element is swirled. So if they have an element already on them and then you swirl it by using an Anemo ability on them with this character that has this set, they'll be debuffed against that element by 40%. So say I was using Hu Tao and I hit something with Pyro, and then I came and switched to Sucrose and swirled it. Well, now that enemy's going to take 40% more Pyro damage, so if I attack them again with Hu Tao, they're going to take 40% more damage, which is really, really strong. In general, for your DPS, you just want to use whichever set is buffing that element. So like with Pyro, you want to use the Crimson Witch set. The Cryo, there's the Cryo set. I don't know if I have any pieces for it. Here, yeah, this Blizzard Stir set. It's really strong for Cryo characters, especially the 4-piece set, if you're lacking on crit rate. This Tenacity set is really strong on Zhongli. I don't really know if I'd use it on anyone else. There's a Geo set for Geo DPS. There's this set that increases your shield strength. Basically, you just want to take the set that plays most to your character's strength. So if they're like a support, like especially Bennett, where is Bennett? This 4-piece Noblesse set is really strong on him because it makes his burst increase all your party members' attack, and since his burst is already buffing attack, I mean that's one of the main reasons you use it, for healing and for the attack buff. So if you just use this, then you double up on that attack bonus. This 2-piece Noblesse is really good for any supports that use their burst for damage, because you can just run 2 pieces of that, 2 pieces of whatever damage element set they are. So like on Xingqiu, I could run like 2-piece Heart of Depths, 2-piece Noblesse. I'm not running the optimal sets on him because I just have some really good pieces on this set and I want to put them on someone. So he ended up with those. Hu Tao, I don't have her on the optimal sets. I have a reason for that, because these Gladiator pieces, even though the 2-piece bonus doesn't really do anything for her, the stats on them are really good. I have really high sub stats on these for Hu Tao, so that's really good. That's something to think about when you're picking your artifacts. Set bonuses are really good, but they can't replace good stats. Like, if you have good substats on an artifact, like both crit substats or something, sometimes it's worth losing out on the set bonus to get the better stats. Usually that's more important on your DPS characters. On your supports, sometimes you care more about the set bonus, sometimes you don't. Just kind of depends. Sometimes you can use some more generic sets, like this Wanderer's Troop set. Increases charge attack by 35% on a Catalyst or Bow user. I'm using that on Ganyu because her charge attack is already super duper strong, so this just makes it do even more damage. Generally, you want to stay away from Wanderer's Troop and Gladiator until you're much, much higher level in the game, because these are really hard to farm when you're lower level, and you're probably not going to have very good stats on them. If you're under AR 45, don't really worry too much about artifacts. Just try and get some ones with good stats on them, main stats. And if you're like between AR 45 and AR 55, try and get some good ones. Try and get all 5-star artifacts, since at that point you can farm them good from the domains. And if you're AR 55, just try and get actually good artifacts with right set bonus, right stats, good substats. Generally, you want both crit substats on your DPS, energy recharge is really good, attack percent is really good, and then any stats that your character specifically scales on. So like Hu Tao, for example, she scales a lot off of her HP. So I have like HP percent here. I got like some HP here, HP percent here, because I want to build to her strengths. Same thing with Zhongli. He also scales off HP, so I have HP on him. Xingqiu, I want to use his burst, so I build energy recharge on him as much as I can. I'll use an energy recharge weapon on him. Basically, you just want to look at your character, look at their abilities, look at how you want to use them, and then use the artifacts and get the stats that work towards whatever way you're using them. Alright, so next, along with your artifacts, the other way to make your characters much stronger is to level up their talents. Generally, on your DPS, you want to level up their normal attack, because that's probably what you're going to be attacking with most of the time, and usually their skill, because usually on DPS characters, their skill will be pretty strong, and then sometimes their burst, depending on the character. I have Hu Tao with all her talents at level 10, because she's my favorite character, so I just leveled her up. But let's take Zhongli, for example. I'm just using him as a support, so I leveled up his skill and his burst, but I didn't level up his normal attack at all, because I'm not normal attacking with him, because he's not a damage character for me. For characters like D-Luke, he's a DPS. His burst does good damage. His normal attack and his skill both do good damage too, so I sort of leveled up all of them. But I focused on these just a little bit more because I'm using these more often, and when I'm using him, he's my main character that I have on the field most of the time, and he's the one that I'm smacking stuff with the most. So I want his damage to be the most out of all my characters. Say with like Bennett or something, I just leveled up his burst and this. Same thing with this. Generally, the way I build my characters is supports. I'll build these up to 7 or 8. Gotta level them up, ascend them. I usually like to take my supports up to 70 out of 80 so I can get their talents to 8 and 8. I still need to level up this one. 8 and 8. DPS, I'll usually go at least up to 8 on most of their abilities, and then take whichever one is doing the most damage and do that one a little higher. Like Ganyu, I have both of these at 8, and then I did her normal attack to 10. Pretty much you just want to level up the talents that you're actually using. So with your sports, generally the way I play, I use their skill to make energy, and then I use their ult, and then I switch to a different character, and then I do DPS with my main character who has the highest level talents, highest stats, highest level, best weapons, etc. Alright, so now I want to go a little bit more in depth on the stats that you want to build for. I've already touched on it a little bit here and there, but just to go more in depth, just to make sure everybody gets what's going on. Sports. If you're using their burst, you want energy recharge. That's how you get your burst back faster. So Xingqiu, I have a lot of energy recharge on him. Where is it? I have 232% on him because that's the main reason I'm using him is his burst. So I want to make sure that I can use that as much as possible. So I make sure that my burst gets the energy that it needs. With Zhongli, I kind of already talked about it. I built him on HP because his shield scales on HP, and I'm using him for his shield, so I built him HP. Rosaria, she does her burst when you use it. Gives 15% of her crit rate to everybody else in your party. So I built her with high crit rate. I don't have, oh, okay, I do have the right weapon on her right now. So I have her at 70% crit rate. I used to have her up at like 80. I swapped her to some different artifacts because I was messing with stuff. But generally, I build her with high crit rates, and then she gives more crit rate to my other characters. Generally, stuff like attack percent is just always good on any character that you want to do damage. Any of my DPS characters that don't scale off a specific stat, like Hu Tao, I put attack percent on them as much as I can. So like timepiece, put attack percent. Generally, as far as DPS characters go, you want your timepiece to be an attack percent, your goblet to be whatever damage percent they do. So like Diluc, I have pyro percent. Xingqiu, I have hydro. Linglong, I have geo, etc., etc. And then for your hat, you pretty much always want crit rate or crit damage. I usually lean more towards crit rate just because it's a little bit harder to get. But you want crit rate and crit damage in abundance on your DPS characters. Generally, I would say if you're just on a random character that isn't a 5-star that has an ascension stat that goes into one of the crit stats, and if you don't have like a crit weapon or something that has crit damage or crit rate here, I would say aim to get 60% crit rate and 120% crit damage. People will tell you, oh, crit rate doesn't matter. It's fine if you have like 40 or 50%. Trust me, it's not as good. If you do the math and you know how this stuff works, you want at least, I would say minimum 60% crit rate if you can reach it. If you're not at that point in the game yet, you can't get good artifacts yet, it's fine, it's whatever. But once you're getting into building characters and you're farming artifacts, you're getting up in your AR, you're past AR 50, head towards AR 55, you should be able to get some artifacts with some good crit stats. You should be able to start hitting those marks. If you have really, really good substats on your artifacts, like I have some here with like a bunch of crit damage, bunch of crit rate, a whole bunch of crit damage here, stuff like that. And if you can get like some of the battle pass weapons, or if you can buy from the shop some of these Black Cliff weapons, get some crit damage or crit rate there, you should be able to get some pretty high stats. Generally, I would say shoot for 70% crit rate, 140% crit damage. Then, if you can reach that, then at that point, build more crit damage than crit rate. When I say more crit damage than crit rate, I just mean higher than a 1-to-2 ratio. So like how I've been saying 60, 120, and 70, 140. You want to have a 1-to-2 ratio of crit rate to crit damage. Then once if you can get up to like around 70, 140, somewhere in the 60s in the crit rate, then you can go past that 1-to-2 ratio. So like on Hu Tao, I have her 76% crit rate. I'm past that mark, so I went beyond the 1-to-2 ratio. I'm closer to a 1-to-3 ratio with her, but at this point I crit enough that building more crit damage is more valuable because then I have the chance of just one-shotting something and then I don't have to attack it multiple times and it saves me more time than if I just had higher crit rate and then lower crit damage, because then if I don't one-shot it, I still have to hit it a second time. It doesn't really do anything for me. So as far as just general builds go, I can just go over some of the ways that I built some of these characters. So like, I've showed some of it already, but I'll just go a little more in depth on it. So for like Xingqiu, I have like this flower, has really good substats, tons of crit rate, that's just always good on anybody. Same thing with this flower, Has crit rate and crit damage and attack percent. This is like a god roll flower. Super good. Again, this one, energy recharge. Talked about that before. He's my support. I use his burst. Has both crit substats. Really good. Hydro Goblet has some energy recharge. Has good amount of crit rate. That's really good on him. And then I use a crit rate hat on him because there's not really any other hats except for like specific characters, like maybe in a Nemo character you might want an elemental mastery hat, or like Noelle maybe, because Noelle scales off defense, so I have like a defense hat on her. But in general, you want crit rate or crit damage, whichever one you need more of. Usually it's crit rate. So like Rosaria, I have, normally I would put an energy recharge one here, but I don't have any good energy recharge ones for her, so I just gave her an attack percent one. Once you get into building characters and you use them a lot, you can sort of make decisions like those for yourself. In general though, I would probably run an energy recharge one if you could get it, but once you know what you're doing, you figured stuff out, you'd say, I'm fine with an attack percent one, it's whatever. Cryo percent, of course, because she's cryo, just free damage right there pretty much. And then I have a crit damage one on her, even though I would normally run a crit rate one just because I have this weapon that gives a ton of crit rate. So then I gave her a crit damage one, so then she has a good ratio and will actually do good damage. For someone like Zhongli, I considered just running him on all 3 HP percent, but I ended up getting an on-set Geo Cup for this set, so I decided to just sort of go slightly more towards a sub DPS type of build with HP one here, Geo damage bonus here, and then crit rate here. And unfortunately his stats aren't that great because I have some crappy pieces. Substats aren't the greatest. I don't really have a lot of crit damage. It's whatever. Say for someone like Diona, I have her on the 4-piece Maiden Beloved set because she's a healer, and I don't know, I don't really have any other sets that I really wanted to use on her that bad. Her shield scales off HP percent, so I have an HP percent timepiece and an HP percent hat instead of crit rate or crit damage, because she really doesn't do very much damage at all. So for me, it's better to just run HP percent, makes her shield a little stronger, makes her worth a little more using. Someone like Chi-Chi, not very great of a character, but I just kind of slapped random crappy artifacts on her because all she really does is heal, so I just have tons of attack percent, attack percent, attack percent, because all her healing scales off of her attack, so got that. And I mean, I could just pick any random character and sort of tell you what kind of build I would go with them. Say Amber. Pick a random character. For her, I would want to build crit damage because she's an aimed bow character. She has some stuff that increases the where is it? Yeah, here. She has this where her aimed shots on weak points increase her attack. Hits on weak points always crit, so crit rate isn't as important on her if you're aiming and hitting weak spots. So I would want to build her with really high crit damage. Since she's Pyro, I'd probably want a Pyro set, or since she's an archer, I could maybe try and do Wanderer's Troop, like Ganyu. Either way, I would go crit damage hat, Flower and Feather, I would try and get as much crit damage subs as I could on those. Some crit rate in case I don't hit, and so her abilities can crit still. And then I would just go attack percent here and Pyro bonus here. Let's say pick a random support character. Let's say I'm building Electro main character. I would probably try and get the new energy recharge set. I can't remember the name of it. This one, the Emblem of the Severed Fate. Because that would increase his burst damage, and since he's sort of like a battery when he's on the Electro one, energy recharge is always good. Or I could also build him on Noblesse, so then his burst does more damage, but he's sort of a battery burst kind of character, so I would focus on energy recharge, burst damage, stuff like that, either with that new set or with Noblesse. And then I would probably give him an energy recharge timepiece. And then I don't think he scales off any specific stats other than energy recharge. So then I would just give him an electro cup and a crit rate or a crit damage hat. And then substats, I would just look for those same stats: energy recharge, any crit rate, crit damage I could get, attack percent, all that good stuff. You really want to avoid HP, defense, stuff like that, unless the character specifically scales on it, because if they don't, it really just does nothing for you. Let's say I was building Razor. Even though he's an Electro, he does more physical DPS type stuff. So I would build him on these physical sets. Pale Flame and Bloodstained. Bloodstained. And then I would try and get pieces like this with like crit damage, crit rate, attack percent. Got like an attack percent timepiece on him. I would go for a crit damage or a crit rate helmet, depending on what weapon I was using. As far as weapons go, if it was like support, like this guy, energy recharge, because he's a support, I want his burst. If it was a DPS, I would go for something with crit rate or crit damage, like this Blackcliff one, or maybe something with attack percent if I already had a lot of crit rate and crit damage. Generally, the best ones for DPS are ones with crit rate and crit damage, because it just makes you do a lot more damage, and it's just generally better. Usually the only ones that I would build a lot of elemental mastery on are Nemo characters, like I've talked about before. Generally they have stuff that scales off of that, and same as the artifacts with your weapons. If you can get a weapon that goes towards a specific stat that character scales with, it's a lot better. So like Barbara, most people use this weapon on her because even though it's a 3-star and has really low base attack, it has HP percent, which her healing scales on, and since you're not really using her for damage anyways, you can use this passive effect to make her a lot better support, so then she's also buffing your main DPS if you swap to them, and you aren't just having a healer. For like Xingling, I use her as my support for Ganyu, and I use her burst. So I had her on 2-piece Crimson and 2-piece Noblesse. So then I had Pyro bonus and burst damage bonus. And then I recently swapped her over to 2 pieces on this set, so then she could get a little bit more energy recharge. But I mean, yeah, and the more you play, the more characters you build, the more you'll just get a general feel of how you like to build characters, what stats you like to build on different types of characters, how you like to play them, and you can sort of just look at any random character, read their talents, see what their abilities are, see if they scale off any specific stats, and then decide, okay, these are the stats I'm going for, these are the artifact stats I'm going for, this is like the weapon that I would go for, etc., etc. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this guide helped you. If there's any stuff I missed or things that you didn't understand or that I didn't cover clear enough, please just let me know and I'll do my best to either answer your questions or who knows, maybe I'll even make a follow-up video to this one or try and improve it or something. Pretty much just made this video so I can send it to random people that I'm trying to help so they can sort of get a general idea of all the stuff that's going on in my head when I'm trying to explain it to them by messaging them, and it's taking forever and it's not really getting through all the way. So hope this is helpful, and I hope that you can build your characters better and have more fun because of it. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe and share it with anybody else. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.